Hey guys, welcome back to the Tetra Health and Performance Podcast. You're here with Mitch.
James.
And Michael.
Today we're going to discuss all things health from a holistic large lens view down to a bit of a nitty gritty, more nuanced view of health and how that impacts us.
So looking up the definitions of health, I was looking for something that we kind of believed in and agreed with. And I found it on the World Health Organization website. And it says a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being, and not merely the absence of disease and infirmity.
It's cool.
So this one we chose because I really agree with this. It's hard to understand health. It's such a broad spectrum that there's so many things that play with health. And again, it can be objective and subjective.
And health will kind of will mean different things at different stages of your life as well. So we know this as a younger individual, health might have more of a static-driven view to it. And as you get a bit older and things maybe slow down, it comes maybe a little bit about your movement and your energy and those kind of more subjective natures of how you view health.
Yeah, listening to someone speaking on social medias the other day, I heard someone mention how if you could be Warren Buffett and have the money that he has now, but you had to be the same age as him, would you do it? For me, I think that made me think. And all of a sudden I thought, okay, maybe my aim to make more money isn't as important, and youth and my health is actually the most important thing to me.
How old is he? How many years we
I
got?
think he's above 90.
Oh God. Oh God.
I pull it up.
You're talking like just several years left to play with extraordinary amounts of wealth. But still, like that's probably not right.
Oh, when I brought this up to Mitch earlier, he did mention how maybe you could play the science game, and hopefully science is coming to a point where with that much money, you could live forever.
Yeah, just buy a younger stud of a body and just live rich and powerful.
Michael, how old is he?
He turns 91. Oh, no, he turns 92 soon.
Ooh.
So he's
maybe 5-6 years left.
It's definitely something to ponder, though, isn't it? It makes you understand what's really important to people when it comes to health. And the reason we looked at, when I saw that definition and I liked it, I thought that kind of biopsychosocial model, where it actually touches on that kind of the social side of things and the mental health side of things, which is, it's only recently becoming clear that that's such an important thing for most people, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Well, for everyone.
That's I think two important things that we touched on there were spectrum, which is there is an enormous wide range of things that can fall into the category of healthy and what is health kind of thing. But then also is all the things that then can affect that spectrum. That's just how it all ties in, which makes it a tricky issue to talk about because there's almost countless things you can talk about that affect it. But
yeah, and are you healthy or not healthy? Are you just healthy or not healthy? Like you said, there's a spectrum. So can you be closer to being unhealthy, and can you be at your healthiest? And it's kind of like the act of training. Not everyone should, most people are going to probably start training when the doctor tells them, you need to train. And that's getting to the point where the doctor's like, oh, well, you need to train. But do people go in to the doctor and seem physically capable, but the doctor says, oh, well, you could also add to this and you could be even healthier. And maybe you could start training. You could start doing some running. You could go to the gym.
Why do we have to wait till it's symptomatic, right? Whereas we're almost near that red line. Like, hey, we're now got type 2 diabetes. Your energy's really low. We've got adrenal fatigue, and we have to wait till we're at quite a low level to have that actionable to go, oh my God, my health needs to be addressed.
So being proactive, I guess, isn't it? It's like you actually being proactive with your health. And I suppose that comes down to messaging and actually hearing people talk about health as an important thing. So hearing that Warren Buffett thing for me triggers me to then think about my health and be like, okay, what am I doing for my health? And I don't think people question that very often.
I think COVID was a big thing as well. In that period where everyone was at home, obviously there was a pandemic going on. So that made a lot of people re-question and rethink about their health in different ways as well, and different aspects to get it, only having an hour of exercise a day, depending on where you're living, obviously, and being outside for an hour can make a difference.
Definitely. With our, for example, our screenings, when we get a member in, we ask them their questions of their goals and what's most important to them. And previous to COVID, I don't think I'd seen anyone say healthy or much fitter. I'd seen these very kind of more superficial goals. And now I think I see healthier written on the goals way more often. Fitness, health, I want to feel energetic. And I think that's a fantastic moving forward.
Yeah. And that healthy, that bucket that consists of healthy, and kind of just touched on it slightly, but social engagement is a huge part of that. That's needed, and that's in that health bracket. Obviously, your fitness, your energy system, your basic aerobic bases, having a bit of muscle mass on your body so you can perform daily tasks. It runs a fair bit deeper, but there's some more of the shallow aspects that hopefully that we'll dive a fair bit more into today.
With strength training, definitely, I love the idea of the strength training being even more popular now, and people understanding how important it is to increase things like bone mass and to stop the risk of getting that osteopenia or osteoporosis in later on in life. And it's also like all the way into your older age, you can strength train. I feel sometimes I have spoken to older populations and they've been like, oh, no, that's not for me. I can't do that. When really it's just progressing them from where they are at that moment, anyone can lift the weight.
Yeah.
And strength is relative. Like wherever you start is good. You can start with the lightest weight possible and just work your way up. Humans are such adaptable organisms.
Oh, 100%. And I think an important thing to think about there is like just a different perspective is you may not be, it's not for me. I'm an older individual like doing resistance training, but in essence, if you want to do something active outside, or even inside, moving something, lifting something, that is in and of itself a form of resistance training, just in a natural environment rather than in a gym, say. So if you want to go, do some gardening or move some furniture around, you're training your body with a bit of resistance, just in maybe not as tight conditions.
And as well as bone mass, we also have so many other things. Like Mitch, you just touched on the cardio, like respiratory system, stuff like that. Like actually aerobic fitness, I see it as one of probably the biggest mistakes made in training. As a coach, you kind of have a job really. When someone comes through the door, even if their goal isn't health, you want to get them to their goals with the most health benefits as possible and with the least health and negative effects. The idea is you want to make sure that they're as healthy as possible reaching their goals. And I think most of the time that comes down to actually taking time with your goals. I think the fast path to most things, and I don't know if you guys agree, but the fast path to get somewhere is normally the most unhealthy. Not always.
Especially with body composition changes, I'd say it probably was.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's that kind of performance v health kind of thing. You are going to sacrifice certain sections of health to achieve something that's bloody high up. That might be stripping off a lot of body fat if that's a goal for you. Let's say bodybuilding competition. We know immune system gets compromised when the body fat starts to strip off a bit too much. Your probably diet's going to be limited to certain things. And we're going to be making these sacrifices to achieve whatever this task is. Bodybuilding's one. You can pick a handful of other things that kind of have the same impacts.
Any sport with a weight division, cutting to make a weight class, or even just like away from sport and performance is just, unfortunately, as humans in general, we don't want to do things slowly. We want results, we want them quickly, but that's not always the best way in terms of health and sometimes performance as well. It's not the best to do it quickly.
It's kind of that the rabbit or hare. Is it? Yeah, rabbit or hare.
Chicken egg.
No, rabbit and tortoise.
Oh, right.
Yeah. The rabbit and tortoise. It's always the when I see members come in and I see them start actually very slowly and they're tracking their weights, they're making these little progresses each week over the person that's trying to make big jumps each week. I always see, like, I know that in 3 months' time, that tortoise, 6 months' time, maybe that tortoise is going to start overcoming that rabbit.
You kind of touched on it just before, James, and I found this something really interesting, something to elaborate on. When someone comes in with these specific goals and they say, no, I want A, B, and C, job as a coach is go, okay, cool, awesome. Let's build a plan about that. Let's also give you some sneaky stuff that maybe you didn't ask for. Let's give you that aerobic base that you didn't necessarily kind of elaborate about on, because this is going to be such an impact to your recovery, your health, just kind of everything. Your ability to take on more stress and more load that actually might be more targeted towards your goal about strength and hypertrophy. So we have to sneak in those things that are factors of health for them, even if that maybe isn't their major goal.
Yeah, I totally agree. And like I was mentioning, like I feel like the biggest mistake made, and you see this very often in the strength and powerlifting kind of industry, is where they completely negate cardio. So cardio becomes like, I'm not going to touch cardio because I'm really worried it's going to ruin my gains. When long term, we often see cardio as an ability that you build up your fitness. When you come to try and put on some more size, you're not limited by your aerobic system. And we've all experienced that. We've done deadlifts or squats or lunges. Lunges is a big one, gets you really out of breath. And you notice that you actually can't do as many reps, not because your legs are burning and you haven't taken your legs as far as you probably could. You've actually gassed out. You can't breathe anymore. And that is now an aerobic limiter rather than a muscle hypertrophy strength limiter.
Yeah, 100%. And I think, unfortunately, like as well, another thing that's a bit of a somewhat misconception as well, you talk about it's like in the strength and bodybuilding community of that kind of stuff of negating cardio, is on the flip side of that is putting too much of a priority on cardio instead of doing your weight and resistance training.
100%.
Like saying, I can't lift weights, I'm trying to maybe cut down or do this, I need to just do all cardio. When in reality, that strength training, that's gonna really come in handy as well.
Here's one of our favorite sayings in here. Only a Sith speaks in absolutes. So if you're going all strength, no cardio, all cardio, no strength, question marks arise. Everything needs context and everything's in shades of grey. You're going to be taking a bit of both and kind of merge both worlds where you can.
And exactly, back on the health side of things, with what Michael was just saying and what Mitch was just saying, while we're looking at the definition of health on WHO, we're also looking at their recommendations for exercise in the 2010 and 2020. And they've actually started to look more at this. Now we actually have to strength train. We should be doing this amount of cardio. I don't have the exact numbers on me, but we should be doing a certain amount of cardio per week. That can be longer low intensities or shorter high intensities. But we also now know that we need at least 2 strength training sessions and we want to be hitting full body muscle groups. So when it comes to health wise, and then you are going to be training, then you don't want to be neglecting your cardio and you don't want to be neglecting your strength, and you've got to be doing both.
2+, baby. The WHO's left it open. Get more in. Do more strength.
Touching on also as well when members come in and feeding them what they should have. It's like, give the members what they want, help them reach their goals, but give them also what they need, which I think is it's hard to get the recipe right, get the right dose for everyone. But we do a lot of that here at Benchmark Canterbury.
I think we do it pretty successfully. And that comes initially building that rapport, building that trust. And once they know they're getting what they want and they've seen a few solutions provided to them and they've seen that initial impact, so much more likely to buy in to go, hey, a bit of cardio is not the scariest thing in the world. And I am seeing my ability to recover and take on more stress and take on more strength training load because now I've been working on this aerobic base for the last 8 weeks.
And give them movement as well. I feel definitely one of the more subjective feelings of health is a good movement ability. Like we hear most people call it as a flexibility or mobility. I think mobility is probably the more trendy word to say at the moment. But really, it's giving people movement options. So when we will screen someone, we're looking at your strength, full body strength pretty much, and definitely body weight strength at first. Then we're looking at your resting heart rate. We do a CO2 tolerance test, and we're also looking at your mobility, your movement, your passive and active movement. And for most people, I feel like you cover them three categories, and they're going to feel fantastic afterwards. They're going to be able to move better. They're going to feel fitter. They're going to be able to walk up the stairs at home, all the way to be able to run a marathon, and they're going to feel strong and be able to do that stuff around the house and be strong.
Oh yes, how's that? That's kind of improving health, right? And the same thing now, you got a supportive network, you feel comfortable, you got a social network. We're kind of trying to improve all that whole spectrum of health while we're in here.
We were talking about tests, like metrics for health earlier. And metrics for health, one of the big ones that became really, really popular over the last few years is grip strength. And grip strength, obviously we have to understand first, I have seen a few misleading things about grip strength on social medias where people are like, oh, you want to live longer? You want to be healthier? You have to train your grip. Well, the grip strength is not so much a causal. Grip strength having low grip strength doesn't mean you are sick or are going to be sick, but it correlates to the amount of muscle tissue you have on your body, particularly upper body muscle tissue. Whereas some studies have actually done tests on lower body as well, so they get a better idea of how much muscle tissue this person has on their body. But as we age, we tend to lose muscle tissue from the more distal, the more the wrists, the forearms, the biceps, the legs, the calves, before we lose it from our trunk. And what you find is the grip strength is a perfect indicator of people starting the progress, starting to lose muscle mass. So a grip strength test can be a fantastic way of being like, okay, you need to put more muscle mass on.
One thing, 100% can agree more. One thing that, and you guys have to stop me here if I get too in deep, and something that we might need to touch on in depth in another podcast, if that's something you guys are interested in, is the use of studies and trying to help you guys assess information better. Because as always, social media is a big one now where it's very easy for anyone to make a claim. And one of the most common used phrases that you hear in a podcast, on an Instagram post, on wherever you see it, is studies show. Studies show this, studies show that, which in reality, that can mean one study shows it, 2 studies, then they could be bad studies. I don't think I need to do a big spiel now about what a good study and bad study is. That's something we might touch on in future episodes. But it's most importantly looking at things that come into the study design, funding, bias, all those things can tie in, and correlation is a big one that falls in, especially in this realm of health, where James kind of alluded with the correlation stuff, where in these studies that are assessing hand grip, they saw a correlation of hand grip strength and older age trending. So living longer had a correlation with higher grip strength, I believe, in the studies you're talking about. Yep. So the big thing is phrases commonly used in studies is correlation versus causation. And James used both those words. In simplest, it means did this cause that, or do they just happen to occur at the same time? Or what's the actual causing factor? Now, I don't think the people who are living the longest in the world are sitting there and smashing out, hand grip exercises day in, day out, and that's how they got there. I don't think that's what's going on. But there is a correlation between them being able to have a higher grip strength and living longer. So it takes a step further to look into and go, why is that occurring, rather than just taking that at face value, as Instagram ads may have you believe to buy their hand grip strength testers.
And when you understand what you can take from a study, like Michael just said, is then we can then use that information to get results. Rather than getting our members to do loads of grip strengthening work, we can say, okay, well, we know to get you healthy, we want to put some muscle mass on the upper body. So we can, instead of doing grip strength stuff, we can probably work grip strength with a bigger full body exercise that might be like a bench press or a seated row, or any exercise really that's going to build trunk, chest, back strength.
Kind of talk more on that, kind of both topics right there. A, talking about social media, and B, talking about cause and correlation. Something to kind of keep your eyes really wide open and kind of be aware of is bold claims through social media. Not just saying studies, but like, hey, check out this one superfood that will change your life. Shreds belly fat in 6 weeks. Like, oh God, here we go. Or this one exercise that cures back pain or hip pain or whatever it happens to be. And if we look at, say, something like introducing a superfood in, you adopt it, it's a causal correlation. If I'm eating that and I'm taking on a healthier lifestyle now, I'm moving more, I'm eating more fresh produce, earth-grown nutrients, on top of that one superfood that I'm getting in, I'm probably going to feel pretty better in a couple of weeks. So is it this one claim to be superfood, or is this lifestyle approach that I'm working around taking this one thing in that's impacting me now?
It's that SIF approach again, isn't it? It's demonizing or glorifying things too much. And the issue with demonizing things is once we're telling people that this is bad, and you can think of fad diets or things like cutting out a whole macro, like cutting out fat completely, cutting out carbs completely. Well, these things actually start teaching people that these things are bad and I shouldn't be touching them, which then limits your options to be healthy. If I can't eat carbs, then I got to get all my nutrients through fats and proteins. Well, sadly, lots of nutrients won't be found in fats and proteins that are found in carbs, and with the fats as well. So when we start limiting things, it actually becomes harder. And I think that you have to be much highly educated to limit things. You have to understand a lot more about food, and the general population aren't that educated on nutrition. So I think that once you start cutting things out or demonizing things, then you need to learn way more about food to be able to get the nutrients in. I have trained so many people that have come in and told me they're vegan. And then I've said, what did you eat today? And they said, well, I went down the vegan aisle in Woolworths and I had Oreo cookies because they're vegan. I was like, okay, so vegans are much healthier in this case. Not to say that you can't be a healthy vegan, but again, just to touch on that point, you need to be more educated when you're going to actually demonize foods.
I think a really important thing to touch on, like I 100% agree, but another thing is why we seek out and why that's so attractive to people is you said it's much harder to limit things out and limit your option than cut things down. It's quite hard. That's true, but it's also much easier mentally. It's very easy if I come in and say, oh, what do I got to do? And you say, oh, just don't eat this. I go, oh, I'm sorted. I'm done. But no, so that's why it's so popular. It's because you can just say, I don't have to think. I go, oh, shit, sweet. I don't have to eat carbs ever again. That's done. I'm the healthiest person alive. Unfortunately, that's not how it works. And us as humans, I mentioned before, we want the quick way, we want the easy way, we don't want to think. It's not like that. Evidence suggests, balanced diet, all those things that we hear all the time. There's a reason they are the recommendation. There's a reason, unfortunately, why it's all grey areas, and that's because that's what it shows. There's no one quick way to do this, that, or anything. And if someone claims that, maybe, but at most times, probably not.
I love this saying, an extraordinary claim requires extraordinary evidence. If you're coming out there going, this one food or this one macro or these two macros, eliminate this other one, you've got to back this up pretty hard, man.
That makes me laugh because I think that most social medias are just extraordinary claims.
Yeah, that's all it is. It's whole
with no extraordinary evidence.
Oh, always just filters, posing.
Man.
And we find it so often as well, don't we? We find like members coming in and actually telling us that they're taking up this new diet, and really you always want to step back with them and you want to run them through to give them some quick information on why it's important not to take things out, and how this one food, like you're saying, Mitch, this one food isn't just going to glorify, like isn't it, that's massively glorified, isn't just going to improve your health straight away. And like big rocks, right? I think most of us have heard the expression of big rocks. Like we have 1%ers and then we have big rocks, and the 1%ers are more like the small rocks, the grains of sand. And when you fill up a tub, you put the big rocks in first, and then you fill up the tub with the small rocks, and they sift through and they take up the spaces, and then you put in the sand, the whole thing's full. Well, most of that space is being occupied by them big rocks. And big rocks are so important. They're things that are guaranteed, we know, are going to change our health and performance and fitness. And really, it's them things. It's like the same things. That's why who are recommending them, and who don't get involved with superfoods. Right? They're telling you, okay, so we know that for you to be healthy, you should strength train, do some cardio. Yeah.
I'd love to see the Hooters go beetroot juice, guys. We got it. It's beetroot juice.
100%. They're playing the Jedi game. They're going, what are the blanket rules that we can apply to everyone alive? We say, what do we know from our evidence applies to everyone? Well, probably maybe not quite everyone. They do their best, but there are individual factors that may play a role, but they do their best to find the things that apply most readily to everyone across the globe. And that's why those recommendations are a bit broad, but stuff that's backed.
It's an unsexy sell, right? Like, guys, eat earth grow nutrient foods, move often, make relationships, have positive engagement, de-stress where possible, get out in nature. It's way less sexy than this one food or this one pill or this 6-minute workout.
And it's not to say that the 1%ers, the small rocks and the sand don't do something. They actually can be extremely beneficial, but we've got to layer them on top of our big rocks. We've got to get them big things done that we know are going to make these big changes. And then when we start fine tuning this stuff and getting these down, becoming habits with them, then we can start adding these small rocks to sand. And then before we know it, like we've got all these incredible habits and we're just going in the right direction the whole time.
Maybe we'll shift just slightly to what's some actionables and what's some measurables people can look at for factors of health. And I think one of the best ones we've talked on a little bit about aerobic base and the importance of it is like resting heart rate, and it being a great reflection of just your state, of your ability to kind of handle stress and recover from stress.
And obviously, because our life changes, taking a resting heart rate measurement is normally best taken first thing in the morning before your day has created stress, even still while you're lying in bed. And then also taking an average over the week. So it could be like 3-4 days of the week, then averaged out. And the first time you do it, don't take that information too seriously. Do it again, start accumulating data and then looking at the average and then see the trends. Yep, see what you can do to maybe increase that or decrease that.
Yeah. And luckily that's becoming increasingly easier. Like a lot of people nowadays, like Apple Watches are very popular. A lot of other trackers are popular, tracking your heart rate. And a lot of things like that. Even if you want to do the old school method of, stopwatch, palpate on your wrist, your heart rate and count, is all pretty reliable. Most likely it's as long as you're doing it with the same kind of thing repeatedly. So even if it may not be you just counting, is not going to be the most accurate, of course, as something that's specially made to do it. However, if that's what you track it against in future, it's always going to be pretty reliable.
A couple of things just on more of that resting heart rate, things that you might be looking for if this is new information to you. So if you start to establish what your mean average is and you kind of know what it is, we'll just use a basic easy number. So let's say 60. And let's say I've had a stressful event, stressful workout, stressful whatever. My body's just stressed. And I wake up the next morning, it's like 75. There's been a big percentage increase. That might be a day where you just take it a little bit easier. You still train, still do your movements, but it might be just a mindful day where I just lower my output slightly. And opposite side of the coin, if that resting heart rate's bit under my average, let's say like it's 52, random number, that might be a day where it's like, hey, feeling pretty good. Body's ready for it. My system's telling me I'm ready to take on stress, take on load. It's green lights, kick some butt. It's a very simple way and simplified way to kind of state it, but it's a nice little reflective measure that you can use like almost instantly to kind of see where you're at.
Yeah. Yeah. So you want to
go? With that, we were discussing that with the Apple Watches and stuff like that. Mitch recently found out that Apple actually also track stride length, walking speed, and walking asymmetries, which all have, again, like they have correlations to your health. Like we know that in the gym we have a movement lens, right? I totally agree that we see most things for a movement lens. Like we see how we can pretty tell that you're having a bit of a rough day by the weight that you're using or how you're moving before we've even asked you. It can be. And also these things always show up. Like when you are like tired or sick, you know the first thing to go is your energy levels, and that's why Apple have done the work into looking at walking speed, stride lengths, and walking asymmetries, because they do show you these early kind of stages of like illness or injury.
Yeah, 100%. I yeah, I think I was going to touch back to Mitch's point on almost that kind of auto regulation of adjusting your day's volume of training or stress or whatever you're going to do that day based off your heart rate. It's important with all these measurables. So whether it's Apple Watch, I know that Whoop give a recovery score, even your resting heart rate. It's be aware of sometimes getting in your own head. So sometimes, so Whoop, for instance, they have like almost a stoplight system, good, bad, medium, red, green, yellow, in those color coded kind of schemes. If you wake up and you say, "Oh, I'm in the red, I'm badly recovered, shouldn't do anything today," that can be fine, but don't let yourself see red or count out a worse heart rate and then go, "Oh, I'm terrible. I'm so under recovered." Go off how you feel as well. These things are just tools to help you try to assess where you're at and try to help you track. It's not the be all and end all. So if you wake up and you might have a red recovery or a higher heart rate than you expected, but you feel good, by all means, still get in there and train, have a lift, have a run, whatever it might be. See how you go, and then if you need to decrease or increase even sometimes the stimulus, go for it.
And that data can be perfect, like really help you make adjustments. So speaking about the big rocks, yeah, the big rocks are going to show up straight away in this kind of data. Like you're going to see your resting heart rate drop. Things like Whoop, you're going to see the changes in sleep patterns. You're going to see your HRV improve. And also then you can start playing with them small rocks. And I really enjoyed it because I was like, okay, so I'm going to work on my sleep hygiene. I'm going to try and get to bed earlier. I'm going to see if that improves my deep sleep. And it did. I tried nasal strips, which I think is such an amazing tool. Most of us do end up being mouth breathers too often. There's not a problem with breathing through your mouth, but it shouldn't be what you're doing all day long, right? Especially while you're sleeping. To get nice deep sleep, you want to be breathing through your nose. So a nasal strip can just open up your nasal passage slightly, and you can just try it. You can literally just pull your nose apart, have a nasal breath, and you'll feel the difference straight away. And we've all tried nasal strips, and I watched it for a couple of weeks, and I got an extra 20 minutes on my deep sleep every time I wore a nasal strip. So that's now for me something that I wear every single night, and often recommend to members to wear as well.
Absolutely huge. Don't do chemist. Amazon. You can get them for like 200 for like $30. They're amazing.
When we first started buying them, we were paying $30 for 10, which shows that they're worth it.
Yeah.
But now you can get them much cheaper. You can just buy them in massive amounts of bulk and wear them all the way through the year.
Yeah. And having these, go back a little bit data-esque, what James was saying there, like just chuck a strip on and you've got like almost a 20% improvement in deep sleep. You've now got a metric you can measure.
Definitely.
It's huge. Yeah, same here. I've had no bigger impact than nasal strips and mouth taping. But also you can test supplements like, it might be a magnesium complex or something that you might use. You can test its impact and its quality to your recovery. And these are all massive factors of your total health. One thing I want to touch on this too, I haven't seen a more negative impact than being on the piss. And my HRV, it's just a more complex measurement of not even resting heart rate, just it's a more in-depth one. It hasn't skyrocketed more than just having a few beers.
Sadly, there's so many like bad things about drinking. It doesn't really help you in any way, especially when even body composition goals, bulking, decreasing, it just doesn't help much whatsoever. But you can look at it from a social side of view. And if you are having a drink like with a friend or a few friends, and that's your way of meeting up with people, then it can be extremely beneficial for your health at the same time. So again, don't talk as a sif. Like it's always there's you can always find something good out of most things, and then it's just the balance for the individual.
Yeah, I'm going to hit back slightly. Just I have a good example backed up as well because it's quite funny.
Nice,
I like the story. There is one kind of little aspect in terms of like a physical benefit that can come as a result of the social enjoyment of drinking alcohol, is that kind of relaxation and that ability to chill out and go, I'm having a good time. I'm hanging out. I'm cool. The example I want to use is I'm pretty sure big Ronnie Coleman, he was stressed out, struggling to get in there and win the Mr. Olympia. I can't remember who it is, called him into his room and said, "Oh, you just need to chill out. Have a little drink with me. We'll have a chat. We'll hang out." And then he won the next day. So
there you go. So
it's not the alcohol doing it. I need to make that clear. You're not going to be in Mr. Olympia if you drink all the beers. But being able to relax, switch off, have a good time, and kind of even sometimes don't rely on it. Obviously, we don't want to run it at all, but like let yourself have a good time. If that's having a couple of beers, if that's gone for a walk, listen to some music, that is going to help your recovery. Just finding what allows you to be calm.
On all our journeys, I think we found moderation is the win, right? Like it's something that you can maintain for long periods of time. We'd go back to the tortoise and the hare. Got it right that time. The tortoise and the hare. Then when you find moderation and you find things that you can do towards your health, towards longevity, and health being the best way to keep training, stay away from injury, stay away from illness, and it will allow you to train for longer. And when you can train for longer, you just keep seeing the gains. I think one of the biggest impacts to lots of sports is not the fact that they didn't perform at their best, their performance training, but it's their ability to not get injured and sick and just maintain constant progress.
Yeah, 100%.
Just kind of half lost my thought, but maybe I can bring it back. In that kind of social model of like relaxation and trying to calm down and find ways to soften the body, I think that's huge. If you know that you're a very sympathetic driven, like a very fight or flight, like I'm always on, brain's always active, I've always got a hectic lifestyle, it's very hard to get that adaptation. It's very hard to get that recovery and that adaptation to what you're after. So you've got to find those abilities and those whatever you enjoy in your life. It might be training, it might be going for a walk, meditation, whatever calms you down and brings you into that parasympathetic, that rest and digest is so important. And to be able to prioritize that in your lifestyle, because if you don't have those little outlets, it's going to be bloody hard to be a well-rounded individual. And you've got to find just what works for you. Everyone's kind of a little bit different.
I feel like taking care of yourself can be a skill sometimes. And me being quite a selfish person, I know what I like to do. Right? I know how to unwind. I know how to calm myself down. But often I see people who are such carers to other people forget about themselves a little bit. And they've spent so long not actually taking care of themselves, not actually relaxing, that actually they don't know what relaxes them anymore. And I think that's where you've got to take over a little bit and be a little bit selfish to find the things that truly relax you. So you can get that, like Mitch mentioned just then, that sympathetic nervous system can be running really heavily in people all the time. You find lots of people find it very hard to calm down and relax. And we call the sympathetic nervous system your fight and flight nervous system for that exact reason, that there's hormones traveling around the body, there's adrenaline, and it's exciting us and it's traveling energy around to be utilized. But our rest and digest system, our parasympathetic system, now this is what calms us down. And the rest and digest, like that's what happens. We actually recover in this time. So when we're training, we actually create a damage to the body, right? So the body has to improve to then be able to repeat this again because it thinks this is the new lifestyle it's going to be living. Then our recovery is going to be improved greatly if we can get into that rest and digest. And I think so many people struggle to even know what helps them rest and digest. We at the gym actually use 5 minutes of pranayama, which is just box breathing or long exhales and soft nasal inhales to try and calm people down to set that in place. Because with training, it's a stimulant. Like people walk out jacked. I see people walk like who've just done like F45 sessions and stuff like that, walk to the shops and then be like they're so hyper and they just need to. The next time you might rest in your day-to-day life, with work coming up next, say for example you trained at 5:30 a.m., then you have work throughout the day, you might not actually calm down until you get into bed.
We're creating a stressed environment and then we're going, hey, go out in that stressful world and jack it up even higher. To have that ability to have variability with your nervous system is huge. To be able to bring it up is very important. Like let's wind back the clock. Let's go predators in the bushes. You have to be able to jack up your nervous system to make a decision, to make an explosive action, to run away or to fight. So that sympathetic nervous system is very important. Can't be underrated. To have that ability to tap in and to work when it needs to be done, massively important. If you live in that, your body wasn't built to stay in that system sustained. That action was meant to be a very quick runaway or a very quick fight. But to be in that system continuously, like this is now tapping into like anxiety and things of that nature, to be very sympathetic like all day for sustained periods, it takes its toll on the body massively. So have the variability to be able to pull out of that and to know what drags you out of that sympathetic state into parasympathetic, whether it be, a few examples, chilling out with your partner, having a glass of red can be a really cool thing if you're just watching a bit of Netflix and that's what chills you out. That's fantastic. If that's going for a walk, meditating, whatever it happens to be, you pick your relaxation there.
Yeah, because where the stressor used to be a predator hiding in the bush, the stressor is now your boss telling this has to be done by 5 p.m. today. Getting on the train and it being packed full of people coughing and sneezing on you. There's just so many different stresses now. So we need that. We need the moments. We need the moments to stress. Should be extremely adaptive. Like any stress that we experience, we should then be able to rest and digest and adapt from that stress to then be able to handle that stress again. But we find that stress actually becomes more maladaptive for the reason that we actually don't have things in place to recover from that stress. And we have to go out of our ways. We have to do things like meditation. And for one person, it might be meditation because it is the best thing about meditation is it's the simple act of just calming yourself down. But other people, it might be gardening. It might be reading a book. It might be lying in the sun. It might be sunbathing, going to the beach, getting in the sea. And it's so important that we find what does that best for us, I think. And people need to be selfish to do that.
100%. I think, a big point there, like two big points is if you're going to try and take your dot points, I know we talk a lot, is just one, trying to have the ability of going in and out of systems, be able to, I'm lifting some heavy weight, I'm going for a big run, I'm doing whatever performance may be, jiu-jitsu, footy, whatever. I'm going to amp up, I'm going to get into that zone and I'm going to own it and then go, okay, I'm done. Time to calm down before my next challenge. And then it's just on you to find A, what you want that stimulus to be, and then B, how do you get away from that stimulus? How do you chill out?
I heard a really
one extra. Sorry, mate. I had one extra one to that, and you have to for that stimulus. We're not going 100 for a task that's at 50%. To be able to bring up that stimulus equal to the task at hand is super important. So if you're like, oh, I'm jacked up, I'm going hard, I'm holding hard, and you're lifting like 30% your max, it's probably not needed. Like, yeah, go lift that, crush that weight with some dynamic effort and speed, but like you don't need to jack your system up to 11 to do a submaximal task. And you can apply that to your boss is coming to you and they've got an important task and then you're freaking yourself out at absolute dial 11 thinking you're about to get fired. To be able to regulate yourself to what's about to happen or the task at hand is a skill set, but freak. It's hard to work on.
Anecdotally, when it comes to training, a good anecdote I always liked was the Russian trainers used to say to a Russian trainer, "Oh, how many hours do you train a week?" And they'd say 70, and you'd be like, "What? 70 hours a week? That's incredible." But really, in the gym, they're doing 12 to 13 hours, and they're actually counting the other 57 hours as their recovery. So they actually have planned recovery. They have their meditation, they have their massages, they have all them things that they know from doing, and they can then get back in the gym and train as hard as physically possible. And I always love the idea of that. Actually counting your hours that are just as important of recovery as well as counting your hours of actually being in the gym.
Yeah, 100%. And like I think we all would have seen it. Is someone going, "Oh, look, I think I'm doing well. Like I'm training hard, but like I'm always sore. Like I come to the gym at the same time every day. I walk, I do this, I do that, and I'm maybe not getting the results I want. I'm always sore, and it's most likely. I think one of the things that we often find is that you're not recovering. So whether that's you're not relaxed enough to recover, whether it's maybe your diet's not in check, you're not sleeping enough. There's all these factors that can play a role in your recovery that are really important for you to maintain and keep up that aspect of your health. And no matter what, as we said a lot today, is that there's so many elements that can play a role, and it's good to look at all of them to identify, why am I a bit off? Is it maybe it's my physical health with my training and recovery? Maybe it's my social aspects that's playing up, and it's always important to be able to check on all of those.
And with stress being everywhere, and with being in the gym training being a stress, the body doesn't as such know the difference between different types of stresses. It has certain hormone releases and chemical releases that it does when it gets stressed, and it doesn't really know the difference between different types of stress. So if you have had a really stressful day and then you're hitting the gym every single day afterwards as a mental release, can be a fantastic idea, but you don't want to be digging your hole. So to stop from digging a hole, you've got to start finding things that fill that hole up, and that is your release from stress. And performance would increase from that, right?
100%.
You see all the time. You see sometimes 3-4 sessions a week. That's what gets you the gains, rather than the 5-6 sessions.
Most definitely. To go back to a little bit, we're talking about like aerobic development as a great factor and looking at resting heart rate. Seeing your ability to have more variability, again, use that word, with your resting heart rate. So let's say we do like an aerobic program and we get to see our resting heart rate has now dropped by 10 beats per minute. That's massive, but that's a system that's going to have a little bit more variability with it, that sympathetic to parasympathetic. If you've got an individual that's really got a really high resting heart rate and it doesn't move much from there, it just goes higher, back to that, higher, back to that. Got to find what can we do as an actionable for them? We can obviously work on an aerobic base and watch that aerobic base and it starts to drop. And it's going to give those guys or girls a bit more variability with jacked up to relaxation. So as an actionable in here, just feed guys cardio. It's one of the best ways to show them how to relax. I know that's a big holistic one.
Oh, I don't think so at all. I think that's the perfect point. I think inside the sets, being fit from cardio will allow you to get more out of the set. You're going to get more reps done. You're going to get more stimulus to that specific muscle instead of the cardio system. And then from doing cardio outside of the sets, you're going to get better recovery. So you're going to be able to come in and perform better again. I think that's like a double prong.
100%. And it's a big reason why a lot of people, even us, sometimes refer to like that aerobic capacity as being one of the huge foundational blocks of everything. It's like everything's built upon it. Your ability to catch your breath and recover after a set of weights, after a set of running, after a set of anything. You need that capacity to be able to get oxygen in and replenish that energy.
And talking of that, of like mortality and morbidity, when it comes to cardio, mortality is the kind of the age that you die at. Like when you die. Morbidity is actually the health that you have up and your active lifestyle, how well you can live life really. And if we're thinking about cardio, the aerobic system is the most important system that exists. Everything you do has to have the aerobic system involved. Strength, yeah, we want to have good strength. When like your quality of life will increase by being stronger. Your mortality will increase. Your mobility would increase. But I think the most important of all of them is the cardiovascular system.
And I've been guilty in the past demonizing it as a young strength coach. Like we talked on this earlier, strength is everything. I must get my numbers up. My numbers are my main reflection of how I am as a human being. Couldn't be any more wrong. Couldn't be any more wrong. You can still maintain those strength factors, but there are so many other human traits that must be developed. And ones that are more important than the others, as we're just saying. Aerobic's probably up there as number one. We'd probably say most people that walk in the doors, two things we really want them to develop. Aerobic system and get some muscle on their body. Those two factors probably fit like 95% of all people.
And how funny is it where someone might come in and you're like, okay, this person, his main goal is flexibility and mobility, and he wants to move better, right? Which is something that we do a lot here at Benchmark. But actually, what's going to make that person move better, like the linchpin, the lowest hanging fruit is let's get that guy doing some cardio. Let's get that guy fitter. And before he knows it, he's moving better anyway. Because you might have that excess weight that's going to help drop, or you just might just be struggling and tense because of that stress. Them stresses that are going to like seize you up and tighten you up, and a little bit of cardio can go a long way.
And that ability to relax and the ability to improve your aerobic capacity, huge.
And talking about back to that mortality and morbidity, that's I think probably the most important thing for most people when it comes to family is that you're going to have kids, you're going to have grandkids, and you want to be around and you want to be fit for your grandkids, and that's going to be obviously mortality rates have increased massively. People live longer and older, but sadly, morbidity isn't improving as much. And as we've been discussing today, how important is it that proactive approach to your health rather than a reactive approach to health, where you're going to the doctor and you're being told that you are going to now be needing to take medications. Rather than that, like you can stop yourself from having to see that doctor as much. Talking about that, it's very important that you do get regular checkups, checking for blood pressures and blood testing, because medicine is quite incredible these days, and you want to be on the top of things like that.
100%. It's a tricky thing as well, because obviously we all know it's time consuming. We've just spoken about all the stresses in the world, obviously, work, jobs, all that kind of stuff. Going to the doctor can be, another stress on top of that, can be, but it's also, it's very helpful, and it can give you information that you wouldn't have if you didn't go, obviously. So sometimes it's much better to not just leave it until, I'm feeling a bit crook, I'm not feeling too great. Get a bit of that same word James used, proactivity around it, and go get a checkup, keep track. It's just another bit of data to measure. Say, hey, look, my blood pressure might have gone down a bit. How good's that? Any and all of those factors that may contribute to you being a healthier individual, even though we touched on it being a big spectrum, is something that you can invest your time in. And obviously finding what's best for you, whether that's a specific doctor that you are comfortable with and you trust, that's also very important. But also obviously getting those objective measures as well as the subjective feelings of how you're feeling and where you're sitting.
Yeah, totally.
On that spectrum.
Cool. Let's say this one in the right way. Obviously, you do your due diligence, you get your checks, you get your feedback, but you also work on yourself. Don't wait for the default, hey, here's a pill. If you have an option to explore actionables you haven't done, so if you haven't addressed your sleep, your movement, your strength, your social circle, your nutrition, these are impacts that we can kind of look at, and you should be trying to be proactive about to address and then chat to your GP about that at the same time. So there are those multifactorial things that we can kind of address ourselves to hopefully improve our health as a whole and work in conjunction with our GP, and not just wait for that pill coming at you.
Yeah, I think is that you've both touched on this a couple of times, where it is we are so often looking for the magic pill, and we are always in hope that science will figure it out for us. There is talk of pills that will do exercise for us, where we can just take a pill and we're
going to be out of a job, man.
But you'll find that actually what lots of what exercise is actually like blood pressure, for example. Like when we're actually training, our blood pressure increases and decreases, and that's actually and you'll find that lots of medications for diabetes and stuff like that. Actually, the exercise replicates very similar things as what the medication does. So and I think investing in your health is so important. Actually, putting some money down on your health. So I spend so much money on my health, whether it be supplements, running gear, like training gear. I'd never see it as something that I need to hold back on. And I think who is it? It's LeBron. It's LeBron James. I think that they recently spoke about how much money LeBron James spends on his health. It's in the millions. Well, he has that money to spend. But I think that says a lot, doesn't it? It says that this kind of guy is actually really spending a lot of money on trying to be as healthy as possible. And I think most of us should spend more money on our health.
Is it tax deductible? He needs to be healthy to do his job, you know.
Oh, yeah. 100%.
Yeah, that's I wonder what that is a percentage of his total income. But that would actually be pretty low, right?
Nothing.
He makes a ball of money.
Yeah, exactly. But like the point is that actually spending money on your health is never money. It's always money well spent.
Yeah. And not just money, investing time in your health as well.
Yeah.
Like it's not just a money investment. And a good one as well, talking about, being proactive and all those things, is even starting activity now, no matter when now is for you. It's much easier to start now, and then if you need to, as you get older and as you age and things might occur, it's easier to cut back a little bit and scale it to where you're at. Much more easy than picking it up when you get to those ages and you go, oh, doctor says I need to get out and move more. Much easier to continue doing something. That kind of classic rule of inertia from physics is much easier to keep doing what you're doing rather than pick up something from scratch. So start now, whatever now is. Get a bit of movement, go for a walk a bit more often a week.
I'm about to butcher a quote, but the quote along the lines of what I was thinking is that actually most people only care about their health when they're unhealthy. Most people only care about their health when they've been told you are unhealthy. And that's quite often too late, or you're going to have to do a lot more hard work to bring your health back. And back to what we were talking at the beginning, you aren't just healthy or not healthy. You can be much healthier. You can work to, I don't love this word too much, but you can bulletproof yourself. That you can do lots of different things to improve your health massively. And that comes down to a lot of again, what we've said before, your nutrition, your stress management, your fitness, your strength, all these things are so important.
Yeah. I would not personally want to be average health. If you took the collective average health, if that's totally an immeasurable thing, I would not want to be that average. I would want to be far past that. Yeah. You look around your circle or at work or whatever, you look at the average there and you want to be above that. You know what the average obesity rates are now, and the inactivity levels, they're skyrocketing.
And what is average becoming? Yeah. Like as we all get more unfit, average is slowly becoming worse and worse and worse. Lowering, be average is not so much something to be looked up at. You want to be above average, definitely.
Yeah. And it's not meant to sound egotistical. I think that's just we're just trying to better ourselves, from a holistic, larger lens.
Yeah, 100%. I think. Sorry, you go.
There you go.
Mine's a bit of a broader point that you can go.
Back to the Warren Buffett thing is again like we discussed is we can, when we look at age and we look at our youth and we look at health, then all of a sudden health actually may be the most important thing that physically exists. And I like the anecdote of someone when you're on a plane, and how when you're on the plane, the first thing you do is you put your life mask on before you put the person's next to your life mask. And that could be your kid, because you need to take care of your health before you can even consider really taking care of other people's healths.
Yeah. So this is a bit to the side, and it kind of ties in a little bit with what I was talking about before with all the study stuff. But just one thing to keep in mind, especially with us as we talk here, is there's a word called bias. It's something that it affects all of us. You can't escape from it. You're always going to have bias. So that's one thing to look at in studies as well, and risks of bias. And that's something, if we get to that episode where you want to hear more about studies and hear me talk about that, we can get there. But in the meantime, like in terms of when we discuss things like that about, wanting to be far past average, like we were just talking there in terms of average health. I'm in the same boat. I couldn't agree more. That's coming from us three, fitter. We are most likely above average of that fitness spectrum and that health spectrum. Also coming from very competitive sport backgrounds. That's who we are. We want to be better. We're competitive. We want to be better than the next person. And that's just something I think it's with everything. I have this lens of, we talked before social media and things where we duck behind and, claims and whatnot. Bias is something to always give him. So obviously we love training and we love all that stuff. And we do our best here to promote all aspects. Like we said, there's so many aspects of health and it's a spectrum. And training is just one slight thing, and training can mean anything and doesn't have to be whatever we do is the best. It's whatever is kind of best for you. And don't just be aware of bias whenever you see information. Something I forgot to touch on earlier, but also ties in what we're talking about.
Yeah, and with that being said, like our bias with training can be to get into a gym, like lift weights, do cardio. Your training can be your body weight training, calisthenics. It can be anything that you prefer, like, and whatever makes you happy, really, isn't it? Because then that way it becomes your stress release as well. Like Michael just touched on when we program our train as well, we try to hit different aspects of what strength is. We try to hit strength as more of a hypertrophy, build bigger muscles. We try to hit strength more as actually let's get stronger neurologically. Yeah, we try and build strength as power as well. And it's actually, when we look at power, it's actually one of the first things to go in old age. People keep their muscle mass, they keep their strength, but actually they lose their power quite quickly. So that neurological response and speed to the muscles is super important. And it's something that should be trained. That's why making sure that as a trainer, your training hits qualities that are going to help people, and all them very many diminishing qualities, right? We like to think of qualities as diminishing because if you don't train them, you lose them. And it's if you don't use it, you lose it. Very much so as you get older, you lose it faster.
Most definitely. And I hope I remember this correctly. One of the most important things when it comes into age populations is power, right? Because what's the most common injury for an older population? It's falling over, right? Yeah. That ability to be quick and to be reactive and to regather your feet just mitigates that fall, right? So we'll look in qualities too. We can look at prioritizing certain types of qualities for different types of individuals. Like I'm talking older, younger, whatever it happens to be. So when it comes into an older population, that we are going to be phasing and cycling in and cycling out quite constantly some sort of power work for these individuals. And that's a massive factor of health for them.
Yeah, 100%. And speaking of factors of health, sorry, I've just remembered something we haven't touched on it yet. We spoke about mental health. I actually don't know how you'd word this, but also something, I guess it's technically mental, but also continually challenging yourself and stimulus in a learning perspective as well. Like I just remember continually, whether it's reading, whether it's consuming information from different sources, assessing that information, trying to learn a new skill. That's yet another aspect of health as well. And it just jog my mind then is obviously like reaction times and stuff and being powerful. Something else you can train up. Another aspect of kind of, I guess it's still mental. It's that neurological stuff of that learning new skills. Mental agility, exactly. Reaction times, learning new skills, however you tackle that is also another important thing.
And these, as well as when it comes to cardio, we're talking about resting heart rate. And when we do look at the body as systems and these diminishing qualities, well, cardio is not just aerobic. It's also, you've got your anaerobic and your more glycolytic systems. It's actually super important for all these different systems that run your body to train them differently at different times. And we do a lot of that here. We like to break it down, look at the diminishing qualities. And while we should be training them all, sometimes you just don't get enough from one if you train them all. So we like to spend time and we call them blocks. We spend a block where we focus on 2-3 qualities that don't interfere with each other too much, and we go hard on them. As them qualities pick up, we move on to some other qualities with them qualities in the background, and we find that's probably the best way to make a very capable human who has a very high ability in all different aspects, which is performance.
Oh, most definitely. And something. I hope that people don't. People kind of like get scared of athletic performance and those traits associated with athletic performance, but that's just human performance. So to say like, oh, that power, that's scary, jumping scary, sprinting scary, or these movements that you might see that might be a bit more intimidating, these are just generic human traits that probably still need to be cycled in your programming at some stage and slowly developed and built up towards. So to kind of fear like, I don't know, sprinting or hopping or bounding or jumping or anything of that nature, it's just part of how we move as humans and isn't classified just to one population being, your fitter individuals. It can be regressed and slowly fed in and developed for anyone.
100%. That's our job. if you come in, it's like, oh
Sure.
no, jumping hurts, hopping hurts, bounding hurts. I can't quite do that. I'm not ready for that. That's our job to go, okay, this is a regression of what you're going to do in the meantime, and we're going to build and get you there. We're going to get you to do the bounds or the hops or the jumps or etc.
And speaking about that loss of power as well, as we slowly as we age, if you don't use it, you lose it. Well, tendons are one of the first things we see people lose, like tendon ability, like the elasticity, and the ability to have stiff tendons, just because they don't use them, because they walk a lot. They're not they may be doing strength in the gym, but they're not jumping, right? And when I think about jumping, I always think, oh wow, when you jump 10 jumps, it's actually exhausting. And then you look at a kid and you go, wow, that may be the best sign of youth that exists. A kid just popping up and down over and over again like it's nothing. And then we make people do some pogos and all of a sudden it's like the hardest thing in the world.
I think it's funny you do 20 pogos in here at a low output and people are like, oh my God, this is horrible. But you watch someone at the dance club and they're pogoing for like 4 hours on end.
Yeah, and I don't think tendon qualities are athletic traits. I think athletes have better tendon qualities, but I think it's a human trait. Humans should have tendons that work. They should be able to absorb and create force using tendons as well as muscles. And I think that's something that massively gets left alone. And that's why we spend actually quite a lot of time and different blocks really developing tendon qualities. Yeah, to feel springy, to feel light on your step. Wow, what amazing feeling that is. And how scared are most people of running? Like, that's one of the biggest things. And also one of the biggest injury risks I think I see is that, and during COVID, it happened a lot where people just decide to run long distances first. But it's like anything. We see old age, like we see like people in their 80s now running marathons. And he can do that because he's maintained it, right? Or he's worked up to it. It's the same thing as starting strength. It's the same thing as starting cardio. Building them tendon qualities and getting into running should be progressed from a low level to a high level slowly and controlled.
100%. And that applies not just training, nutrition as well. If you try to get nutrition, sleep, if you try and get your body to go, oh, I can't, I'm not getting enough sleep at night, I need to get to bed earlier. And you try to start going to bed at 9 o'clock instead of midnight, you're going to struggle. You're going to lie awake. If that means you progress yourself over a number of weeks, slowly working back that bedtime until your body's adapted. Sweet.
I hope this point's been driven home so many times throughout this chat is looking for longer term solutions rather than short, quick fix solutions. And we can see how many times throughout this chat this has really come up, whether it be, diet, whether it be body composition goals, whether it be subjective measures of wellness. It's always going to be a long-term game. Slowly layering changes of habits and direction, slowly layering that is always going to be the long-term option for us.
I suppose because with a body composition goal, it's quite a clear route. Like, this is where you're going to get, this is what you want to look like. This might be the weight you want to be. This might be the muscle mass you want to have in your body. But when it comes to health, because you can just get healthier and work towards that, and you can improve in many different factors. There's so many different factors to improve on. And if you stop training for health, then you will lose your health. That's the reason we call it diminishing qualities. Therefore, the pursuit of is the journey. You have to continuously train forever.
Never stops.
I think that's pretty much it.
Yep.
Any other points, guys?
Not so much. Guys, if you've made it this far, thank you. Definitely give us a like, a subscribe. 5-star, it helps us get a bit of traction with this, and hopefully we can keep this the momentum of this keep working. If you guys have any questions, queries, and stuff you want us to talk on, please contact us in some form.
Yeah, 100%. One thing I also wouldn't mind encouraging as well, especially as we may start getting into more detail and different topics and whatnot, and we'll be better at this as well, as we'll post up when we start getting diving deeper into studies and whatnot. We'll post those, and we'll post the ones we're referencing in future. And also, if you have any questions about those studies or about studies you may have read, chuck them in. We'll do our best to get back to you. Or same with any of your questions, we'll do our best, and it might even be something we cover in future episodes.
Thanks, guys. Catch you on the next one.
Too easy. Thanks, guys.